Welcome to the Live Life Well podcast for busy women. As a busy mum myself, I understand how hard it can be to look after ourselves. But hopefully this is a space for you to take time out, find connection, and get some simple takeaways to live life well, mind, body and soul. Let's jump in. Well, hi and welcome to the Live Life Well podcast for busy women with me, Jo, and our guest today, Sarah, who I'll introduce in a second. But I just want to remind you that this is a space and a podcast for us as busy women to think about how to take care of our well-being, whether that's our physical, our mental, our spiritual well-being. They're all important and they all work together to help us feel well. Like we deserve to feel. But today we're going to be talking about fasting, and I'm really excited to be talking about this because I want to learn more about it. It's something that I practice to a degree, but I don't know loads about it. I know that it's good for us if done well. But we have our expert with us today, Sarah Wilkinson from Equilibrium in Silsden, which you are a skin practitioner, aren't you, Sarah? And you've got your own skin and wellbeing clinic, but you've also recently trained to be a fasting coach. Is that right? How did you sort of get into that, and what's that been like?
So, bit of a long story, but ultimately, when I work with my skin clients, I work from the inside out as well as what I see topically. And I've always had an interest in cellular health and the internals of the body. And I was presented with an opportunity in April of this year, actually, to develop my understanding and dig deeper into the world of fasting, because I was struggling with my own menopause journey, looking for a natural solution to my symptoms. And an opportunity presented itself whereby I was introduced to a course that was running to work alongside Dr. Mindy Peltz, who is probably more well known in America than she is in Europe at the moment. But she is a bit of a guru when it comes to fasting for women and fasting to optimize your hormones. And so it was kind of a bit of a too good to miss opportunity that wasn't planned at all in terms of my sort of goals for this year with the business. But it came along at the right time and I just went for it. And actually, I have to say that it's totally changed my hormonal journey, as well as a lot of other things within my own personal life. And also feel like it fits quite well with my day job of treating people's skin, because I'm seeing a lot of more women come into the clinic now that are suffering hormonally with their skin. And fasting is a good way to kind of try and recorrect and re-regulate everything.
Brilliant. And I love that you take that holistic approach, because absolutely our skin is just a sort of signal of what's going on inside, isn't it? And yeah, our gut health and digestion are so connected, aren't they? And that's kind of my area. But I love that your areas are skin, and then looking at what we eat and how we eat as well. And I'm really excited that you're going to be talking to us about that link between how we eat and our hormonal health today. That's really fascinating. But before we get into that, I'd just like to ask all my guests on the show, what does living life well mean for you?
So for me, it is eating as clean as I possibly can, keeping my mind as clean as it possibly can be. So that means things like meditation. I absolutely love, I've got 2 dogs, so I absolutely love walking, but I love walking and tree hugging. So I'm often found hugging trees in the woods because it just helps with my mental health. I'm also a cold water swimmer, plunger, whatever you want to call that. So for me, it's mental clarity, keeping my own health as healthy as it can be naturally, and giving my body all the tools it needs to have a fighting chance to live a long and healthy life.
Yeah, that's what it's about. That is the goal, isn't it? To live a long and healthy life. And I'm really excited that you're going to be here giving us some of your tools today. But absolutely, like nature is so powerful, isn't it? Like you're saying, getting outside for walks. Our dogs are so great at keeping us on track with doing that. But yeah, feeling that clean and lightness inside and outside through how we nourish ourselves and the habits we have are so important. But absolutely with that goal to feel well for as long as we can. I love it.
Absolutely, yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, well, I'd like to live long into my years, but I'm not bothered about living to be, 100, for example. But whilst I am alive, I want to be as optimized and as healthy as I possibly can be naturally, to give my body all the tools it needs to live a natural life.
Yeah, it's kind of the quality, not the quantity of the years we have, isn't it? And you've really got to do this work, though, to find out how to do that. I don't think it's something that you'll learn in school or from the NHS. It's like this kind of, these spaces that we're creating these conversations where you can get the tools to do that, isn't it? And empower yourself to have this long, healthy, happy life. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm on the same page there. Okay, so fasting, please just give us a bit of a lowdown. When we say fasting, tell us where you're coming from and what that looks like in terms of frequency, length, and just in general. What's like a good base level of like what we should be aware of and what helps us before we get into the sort of specifics of our cycles and our hormones. Just in general, give us a bit of a lowdown on fasting, what it is, and kind of maybe how it's helped you.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people, when you first mention fasting, are a bit like, oh my God, I have to go without food. And it's kind of like a deprivation, if you like. But we've got to think back to sort of our primal, ancestors who very much lived life in a fasted state. They were feast or famine, not knowing where the next meal was coming from, and, all these things. So the body is actually well equipped to get on board with fasting, and it has so many amazing health benefits, so many amazing resetting opportunities. And really, you can introduce fasting. The things I like about it the most is it's free. You're not having to schedule in any more time into a busy life, so you're not having to organize to go for an hour's session at the gym or whatever. You can pop it into your own lifestyle very easily, and it can fit in with your family dynamic as well. And also it can fit in with your plans socially, so you don't have to deprive yourself of going out and about. I never really, within reason, and we'll come to this in a moment, but I never really plan what days I'm going to fast until I wake up that day and see how I'm feeling. Where am I in the cycle? What have I got planned for that day? Is it a good opportunity to do a fast? I always intermittent fast. So I always kind of try and aim to stop my eating window by about 7 p.m. at night, and usually don't open up that window again until about 10 a.m. in the morning. So that gives me a good sort of 15 hours free there when most of the time I'm asleep. So, it's all about, I don't believe in, depriving ourselves of and putting ourselves into these, things like calorie deficit, or you can only eat certain coloured foods on certain days, and all this kind of thing. For women, it's just not practical. And so therefore we end up having short-term wins, but very long-term problems. Because we often fall off the wagon, and then we beat ourselves up mentally, and it's that trajectory of that inner voice to ourselves. And so with fasting, you don't need to have that, because you can you're very much in control of it yourself, and it's quite interesting to then open up the windows for longer and see what happens to your body. And if you are somebody that's sort of had a history of illness, or particularly if you are coming into the menopause, it can really help your body to kind of cope with those extra pressures that get put on the body through inflammation and the lovely joys of hormone fluctuation.
Sure, all those fun things. But yeah, I love what you're saying, that it's kind of easy, free, and practical. It's long term, because we don't want another fad, don't we? We don't want another thing that's complicated to add into our already busy lives. It has to work, and it has to be straightforward, and it's all about making those long term changes, isn't it? Not just doing something as a one-off because it's trendy. So I think I do something similar to you in terms of intermittent fasting, but I'm interested in hearing about like introducing sort of longer phases or days here and there. Maybe I try not to eat sort of between 7 and 9. That's kind of where I'm comfortable with. Because like you say, it's kind of part of it is getting to know your body better, isn't it? And being more in tune and not going so you're so starving that you're ravenous, but listening and thinking, am I really hungry yet, or could I wait a bit longer? And giving your body that time to sort of reset overnight. It's so important for our digestive system, isn't it, to have time to rest and reset? Because every time we eat, we're like triggering them to start up again, aren't we? So it's really important that they have that time to do the cycle. But yeah, so as well as that, do you do more extended times, or is it good to like have a day now and again, like a full day, would you say? Or does that all tie into our hormones as women, which we will get into?
Yeah, so it's really one of the things that I've fasted for a long time, really, when I think back, but I just wasn't doing it properly. And the key thing here is to fast with your hormones. So even if you are a non-cycling woman, you can use the lunar phases to sort of fast like a cycle, if you like. But this is often where women fall short, because they do the same duration of fast every day of every week of every year, and so that's not going to then bring about change. It's a bit like going to the gym and doing the same workout every time you go. You're not pushing yourself, or if you're not flexing it, it's not going to bring about the good changes that you're wanting to happen. And the key changes that we're wanting to do is take the body from sugar burner to fat burner. And that only happens within certain windows and certain lengths of fast. But you mentioned previously there about doing what suits you. And that's really true. We call it the N of 1. So it's all about finding what you feel comfortable with, what fits in with your lifestyle, how your body responds, what things have you got going on in your body, health concerns or, hormonal concerns, what is going on with you at that time, and to really sort of like dial into your own body and get that feedback. And also to ask yourself, are you hungry or are you bored? Because quite often when we are doing longer fasts, for example, over the time that I've been sort of playing around with it and using myself as a bit of a case study, my really challenging time when I'm doing my longer fast is when I'm getting to that 22-hour mark. If I'm doing a 24-hour fast or longer, 22 to 24 hours, it's always my mind kicks in. It starts obsessing about food. And I also get a real detox shift of going really cold. So I know at that stage, and now I've kind of got that information to prep for that. And I'll come on to the tools that I use sort of for that in a moment. But I just kind of know clearly there's something key happening in my body at that stage that's bringing about change. But now I'm forewarned, I know what's going on, and I'm ready for it, as it were. But it's all about just recognizing the signs that your body's giving you. And like I say, asking yourself, are you hungry or are you bored? Are you hungry or are you thirsty? All these kind of things come into play. And also, when you kind of start to go into the longer fasts, I would say the key element to it initially is distraction, keeping you plan it on a days when you are going to be quite busy, quite a few things going on, so that you're not then sat just churning over, I'm not eating, because that is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something really powerful though about just coming out of your normal habits, isn't there? I think we're so used to, in our Western civilization, just food being so available, that we barely even allow ourselves to become hungry, because we don't have to, do we? There's always snacks on hand. But there's something really nice and powerful about stepping back from that. And when we change up our habits, it is that opportunity to get to know ourselves better, isn't it? And to get in touch with our bodies and our real hunger cues. Food tastes so much better when we're really hungry, doesn't it? Rather than maybe like snacking all day. So it's a really nice invitation, I think, to get to know ourselves better and learn about ourselves. So maybe before we get into like when it'd be good to introduce longer fasts, will we maybe chat about cycles and hormones? And I'm really excited to hear about this, like how to fast according to different stages of your cycle as a woman. I think that's fascinating. So can you talk us through that? Maybe give us a bit of a summary of what's the recommended fasting periods for each stage of our cycle and how that helps us.
Yeah. So just for everybody listening, when I certified, I work with the Fast Like a Girl Principles, which is the book that Dr. Mindy released earlier this year. So in short for FLAG. And the sort of principles that she follows and that really are sort of quite crucial for women are that we have 4 phases of our cycle, and again that ties in with this, if you are somebody that works with the seasons for their cycle, it sort of makes the same sense. So when we have 4 phases, as I say, the first phase is called the power phase, and that is day 1. So that's day 1 of your period through to day 10. And that is when everything is starting to kind of reboot. You've had your period, you've had that sort of depletion in hormones, and now everything's starting to kick off again, kickstart. So we're kind of coming into producing estrogen has a surge, and in that first phase, that first 10 days, the power phase 1, you are ideally wanting to be eating ketobiotic foods. So that is low nature's carbs, good fats. So when we're talking about good fats, we're looking at things like olive oil, avocado oil, tallow if you're non-vegetarian, coconut oil. All those kind of things are essential fatty acids for the body, which then satiates the appetite. Another key factor to put in here as well is that if you are somebody that's looking to build muscle, or if you are working towards an event, for example, a high rocks or some kind of like high intensity fitness event, then you want to put in protein here, high protein. And because protein supports muscle, and also what it does is it increases the insulin receptors on the muscle, so that therefore then your glucose spikes and things like that aren't as high when you then ingest food. So power phase 1, ketobiotic, days 1 to 10. This is kind of when you're coming out of the winter and into spring, and you're starting to kind of like become in biology, we're becoming quite sociable, quite priming ourselves to potentially mate with a partner, all those kind of things. You then go on to the manifestation phase, which is a very short window, and that's days 11 to 15, 14, and this is essentially ovulation. So in this phase, you are looking at eating a hormone feasting diet. So that is increasing nature's carbs. So things like your sweet potatoes, your quinoa, those kind of things to support that hormone production in this phase. Like I said, it's a short window, and you would just eat according, to that part of your cycle. So we then come on to the other small power phase, which is days 16 to 18, 16 to 19. And this, again, is quite a short phase. This is when your manifestation in your power phase 2 is when you sort of like, you're peacocking, you're becoming quite extrovert, you kind of putting yourself out there to essentially, get yourself a partner and procreate, basically. That's in the biology sense of things, and so your body is priming you for that. So in this power phase 2, very much like the eating window of power phase 1, it's ketobiotic, low nature's carbs. It doesn't like this phase of the cycle doesn't like your glucose to be high, so we want to keep everything nice and level. And then we come on to the nurture phase of our cycle, which is when there's no fasting happening in this phase, because this is essentially our winter phase. This is our hibernation phase. We become less sociable. Progesterone is coming in big time at this point, and she is very introvert, very just wants you to slow down, rest, TLC. It's all about looking after you and kind of also really reducing your stress levels within this particular part of your cycle. Within this phase as well, you are going to be looking at hormone feasting foods again. So that's higher natured carbs, really sort of like, this is why in this phase we crave carbs, we crave chocolate, because it's all about that, boosting the glucose in this phase wants to be a little bit higher to support that progesterone stage. Now, just to kind of go back a track, within those phases, so power phase 1, days 1 to 10, your fasting windows as well within these phases. So power phase 1, you can do your longer fasts. So I always tend to do, when I've had my period, give it a couple of days to let my hormones sort of rejig again, rebalance. And then I tend to do a bit of a longer fast in this particular zone, because it's when it's optimum. So in this period, power phase 1, you can do your fasting window anything between 13 and 72 hours. And when you are a bit more of a seasoned faster, you can play around with these numbers a little bit, but this is just for kind of like guidelines, really. And then in the manifestation phase, you're looking at shorter fasting windows. So that's more like 13 to 15 hours. So that would literally kind of be your overnights. And if you want to rejig them. Power phase 2, same as power phase 1. So that's your 13 to 72 hour windows. And then, as I said, in your nurture phase, no fasting. We're all about sort of nurturing the body, feeding it up, building it up, ready for basically, conception, essentially. And then the cycle continues. Now, if you are somebody that isn't having a cycle, so that can either be through using the coil or being on birth control, or if you are a postmenopausal woman, or if you've had, say, surgical menopause, that kind of thing, you would follow the lunar cycle. So day 1 of your cycle would be the new moon, and you would work it that way. Now, if you are postmenopausal, to be honest with you, you're at a bit more of an advantage, because your hormones aren't kind of coming and going as much as a cycling woman. And so you can, to be honest, just start doing fasting whenever you want, really. There's less rules when you are a postmenopausal woman than when you're still having a bleed and what have you.
That is so interesting. Oh my goodness, I've taken so many notes. I'm sure everyone listening will be as well, because I'm starting to dig into this more, being more aware of my internal seasons and sharing with my clients how to nourish ourselves differently at different times, because absolutely we're not the same all the way through our cycle.
No.
But to hear about how to add fasting in, that's fascinating. And there's those two phases of just like nurture and nourishment and slowing down and eating more, which we can look forward to. And then those phases where we're kind of primed more to be able to go longer without food and kind of be energized by that, I guess, rather than that depleting us. That kind of energizes us, doesn't it? So that is so fascinating. So would you recommend, if someone is new to this, even in those 2 power phases, starting off with a bit of a fasting window, say like your 13, 14 hours, but then gradually building it up? And maybe how often would you recommend doing something like a 24-hour fast as you're starting off, and then what would that look like further down the line, kind of thing?
Yeah, so when you first start your fasting, the best and sort of easiest way for you to introduce it is to do your no food by X time, reintroduce food by X time the next day. Now, I also play around with that. So sometimes my last meal of the day will be a lunchtime. And then I go, I skip my evening meal and go through to the next morning and, start again. So remember, you can play around with these fasting windows to suit your lifestyle. So, for example, if you're a shift worker, or every night you have your evening meal with your family at 8 p.m, rather than sacrifice that, which is not what we're about, we want you to Because remember, when you get together in community with your family, with your friends or whatever, that also is increasing oxytocin within your body, which is one of the key hormones. And so we don't want you to sacrifice that, because that's something good for your body. So what you can then do, instead of sacrificing and curtailing that 8 p.m. window when you might finish eating at 9 p.m. at night or 8 p.m., then you just knock on your hours that you introduce food in the next day. So that might be more like 11 p.m. or 12 midday, so you don't have to, it's not disastrous if you're a family that eat quite late due to social commitments and, sports clubs and things like that. So when you first get started, I would always sort of recommend the intermittent fasting, where you kind of not eating for, say, 12 to 15 hours, and then you've got an eating window of, say, 8 hours, and whatever time that looks like for you. And then slowly over time, you then extend those windows either way. So you'd stop eating earlier in the evening, for example, or reintroduce food later in the day. And that way, then, without sort of really feeling it, you're extending your non-eating windows and your fasting windows. And before you know it, you've gone 24 hours. And I'm not trying to make this sound like it's, no challenges, dead easy, because it really isn't. A lot of the time, your mind comes into play, very much so, because again, what happens naturally is your body thinks, wait a minute, there's no food coming in, there's no glucose, how am I going to survive? And it starts to panic, and, this trajectory goes on in your mind. But then if you can sort of find a way to override that, either through distraction or through taking on board some electrolytes, whatever that works for you, then you can push it a bit further, and then that voice tends to quieten down, and away you go. So as a rule of thumb, your longer fasts, I do quite a few longer fasts now in a month, or in sort of like a quarterly phase, if you like. But your 24-hour window is aimed at gut reset, really. So if you are somebody that's either got gut-related conditions or has had a lot of antibiotics over the years, or quite a lot of illness, quite a lot of medical illness, that kind of thing, a good rule of thumb for doing a gut reset, you could do a gut reset once a month, and that would really stand you in good stead. You could also just do one once a year. Again, it's about finding what works for you and what fits your lifestyle. We then go on to the next phase, which is 36 hour. 36 hour is all about sort of resetting things like your dopamine. We're in a world of where we are addicted to dopamine, really, doom scrolling, all this kind of thing, quick fix dopamine hits. And sometimes it's worth resetting that, to just take that yearn and to re-regulate your dopamine. Just to go back a step as well, another key sort of phase, if you like, and key moment is around about the 17-hour window of fasting, which then kicks in something called autophagy. Now, autophagy fasting is really good for, what autophagy is basically your body goes through the systems of the body and clears out dead cells. Some people call these zombie cells, some people call them senescent cells, and autophagy is amazing for clearing out dead cells. And why that's so important is because dead cells within our body can often then lead to disease. They become rogue, and they can make us feel pretty grotty, just from a toxin point of view. But then over time, they can also lead to quite sinister conditions. And so the more we can do to remove those from our body, the better, because then it also clears the way for new cells to be able to thrive and flourish. So autophagy fasting, the benchmark is 17 hours, but then it can go, it's between 17 and 72. So it can be quite a long window. And again, when you get into the state of autophagy, it differs for each person. So it's about playing around with that, and there's tools and things you can bring in to kind of help you know a little bit more about where you might be in that autophagy stage, which I can come on to in a little while. We talked about the 36-hour fast after the 24. The 36-hour fasting is quite good for the fat burner reset. So if you are somebody that's tried intermittent fasting, particularly hormonal women, menopausal women, if you are somebody that's tried intermittent fasting for weight loss and you've kind of hit a bit of a brick wall, it's not really working anymore, you got some results initially, but now it's not really doing its thing, you might be have a bit of a heavier toxic load. Your body might need a bit more of a reset. You might need a little bit more assistance. So the 36-hour fasting window would be quite good for you, because this is the fat burner reset. And ultimately what this does is it puts the body in a state. I mean, the body is so clever, and the more you dig into getting to know it, the more it just amazes you on a daily basis. But what this particular fasting window does is it encourages the body. It sort of starts to think, wait a minute, we're not getting food here. And what it does is it goes off and looks for old glucose, which is stored in your body as fat, and starts to burn that fat. So if we've all done it. We've all lived lifestyles where we've grabbed on the go and eaten on the go, processed foods, etc., etc. And again, the body being so clever, instead of storing that fat on the organs, which is obviously very dangerous, it stores that glucose as fat in the extremities of the body. So that's why we sometimes end up with cellulite. We have cortisol belly, when we hit the menopause. And so it'll encourage that weight loss. And you'll probably find then that when you return back to your intermittent fasting, your results for the weight loss side of things are much better and much improved. And again, it's up to you with regards the times that you've put these in. You could just do this once a year, and use it as a detox after Christmas, or, after a big birthday or something like that. Or you could do one every quarter. There really is, as long as you know the cues and listen to your body, there's really no kind of hard and fast, really. Don't do this, don't do that. It's all about just tuning in as much as you can. And then we have the dopamine reset, which is 48 hours. So your dopamine reset speaks volumes. It's all about resetting that dopamine, making it more regulated so that we're not going off and wanting to find that dopamine hit all the time. And again, like I say, that's 48 hours. And then we've got the last one, which is the immune reset, speaks for itself. It's a 72-hour fast, sometimes referred to as the 3-day water fast. This is gold in terms of fasting, because what it does is it resets the immunity within the body, but it also, how it does that is, one of the things it does is it encourages the body to produce stem cells and growth factors. Now, stem cells and growth factors we lose at around the age of 30. Our body kind of stops producing that because it sees it as though we're not really that bothered about aging anymore, and our prime years, as it were, are not over, but less important. And so the body doesn't focus on producing things like growth factors and stem cells as much as it does when you're 30 or younger. What stem cells do, they are so clever, is that they don't have an assigned role as such. What they do is they wait for the body to give the orders out and say, right, we need more brain cells, we need more heart cells, we need more such and such cells. And they then reassign themselves as those cells. And so they are so clever at being able to eradicate disease, correct old injuries. For example, if you're somebody that's got an old sporting injury and you've been having physio for ages and it's just not really going, if you put in a 72-hour fast, honestly, it's pretty amazing what can happen in your body. All these niggly injuries can disappear because the stem cells will rush to that area and kind of almost eradicate the problem and fix it. And so the longer fast, the 72-hour fast, there's a lot of research in that area it's been utilised with people that are going through chemotherapy and things like that. They utilise it alongside their treatment to support the white blood cell production, and that's actually been researched and proven to be, a thing. And so the immune reset, 72 hours, is pretty special and brings about so many changes within the body, not only hormonally, but more long-term health benefits as well.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. And what I'm hearing is kind of similarly to when I did a podcast recently with my friend who's a menopausal health specialist, and she was basically telling me that my little skimpy weight at home training sessions weren't going to cut it. I had to get to the gym and lift some proper weights. What I'm hearing from you, Sarah, similarly, is that my 13, 14-hour fasts overnight are all well and good, but if I want to get the real benefits, I'm going to have to suck it up and do some longer sessions.
Yeah. And, sometimes the way to make it easier is instead of, it depends what meal is kind of your go-to meal of the day, as it were. 'Cause I'm not really a breakfast person, so I prefer to, if I'm going to push my window a little bit, I'd rather kind of push my eating window past breakfast and into like my lunch, as it were, rather than my evening meal. But if you're somebody, depending on where you are and what meal you prefer, you can achieve it quite easily, and pushing that envelope a little bit and pushing that non-eating window can be done by just shaving off an odd hour each side. And you'll do that for a couple of days, for example, if it's the right part of your cycle, and then you might add another hour, take away another hour. And then before you know it, you've done a 24-hour fast, without really feeling it too much.
Yeah, and I guess you can do 24 hours and then go to bed. You can then do 36, can't you, really?
That's it. So if you time it right, that's why sometimes if I'm doing a longer fast, I'll have my last meal at lunchtime, because psychologically I can go without my evening meal. Then I'm going to bed. I'm not really fussed for breakfast. So then before you know it, it's lunchtime again. That's 24 hours. Yeah. And then sometimes I'll get to that stage and think, actually, I could probably go a bit longer. And again, you've missed your evening meal, you've gone to bed, and before you know it, you've accumulated either 36 or 48 hours. Yeah.
But I guess it's just wise to start, like we said, gradually. Start with your overnight window, extending that, then going in tune with your cycle, and then just stretching your fasting cycle a bit. And it's just fascinating to hear the different benefits. And I think that is motivating because it's not fun. It's not easy at the time, but it's simple and it's achievable. So I think when you know the benefits, when you sort of dangle that carrot, you know how good it is for you. It motivates you to give it a go, and then you feel the benefits, and then you want to do it more, do you? And I know, I'm a Christian, and I know we're taught as part of our faith that fasting is good for spiritual reasons, but I believe it's also for physical. It's that whole, you started off saying, is that holistic benefit you get from these habits that aren't always easy, but they are so worth it and so good for us. So I think you explaining some of the science behind it and giving us that sort of monthly guide, that really helps me to know that we don't have to do this all the time. There's parts of our cycle where we can forget and we can feast and we can enjoy our food, and there's parts where our bodies will be primed to give us the best chance to do this well and then get the benefits. So I think you've given us such a good guideline and also shown us the benefits, which is so helpful. And just to make it clear, when we talk about fasting, it's no foods and just clear liquids, is that right?
Yeah, so what I would say is when you are preparing to do a longer fast, what I tell my one-to-one and my sort of social followers is always try and prepare your body so you would fat load before you're kind of going into a longer fast, and this is your essential fatty acid, your good fats, because what that does is ultimately it satiates your body so that then when you are essentially going out without food, you've kind of got those stores where you, and again, protein's another good one for this, fibre as well. So having that balanced diet before you kind of go into a longer fast. I've done it before where I might have had I don't drink alcohol anymore, but I might have had food-wise a bit of an indulgent weekend, for example. And I think, I'll do a fast but I've not prepped myself properly, and it's been a struggle. It's been harder. So I would say, you've got to be mindful of, there's a degree of planning, especially when you're first starting, until you get your flow with it. But yes, the key things are to remember when you go into your longer fasts is that your body's going to start losing minerals, key things, magnesium particularly. So a couple of things you can use to hack this is electrolytes are key. And I would say I drink electrolytes all the time. All my water is always electrolyzed anyway. But electrolytes become your best friend when you are doing your longer fasts. And that can be either an electrolyte product or things like Celtic sea salt into water can be an electrolyte. And then other things that you can use to hack it. If you're wanting to do a clean fast, it would purely be water, electrolytes, possibly a magnesium supplement for when the challenges get a little bit harder. You can take a bit of some magnesium to really boost those levels. And the water can be filtered, sparkling. You can have herbal teas as well, as long as there's nothing in it that's going to spike your glucose. So no fats in it, However, ironically, if you are not bothered about it being particularly clean fasting, you can use things like what we call fat bombs, which are sometimes just a teaspoon of olive oil or a teaspoon of what we call MCT oil, which is derived from coconuts, in your fasted state. And that can sometimes just give the body enough to not break your fast, but help you to then go for longer. There is also things like bone broth. If you are not a veggie, you can use bone broth sometimes to extend that fasted state. Again, it won't spike your glucose, but it will allow you to, be supported in that fasted state. But the main sort of thing, like you would again if you went to the gym and you were planning on, say, stepping up your regime, you'd plan for it. You wouldn't just go in and try and lift 100 kilograms cold with no warm up, with no, prep. You do the necessary to avoid injury, and that's the same with fasting. You do the same prep to respect your body, to respect your hormones, and to ultimately get the best out of your fast. But yes, if you are clean fasting, it is just water, nothing that's going to spike your glucose, essentially.
So when you say electrolytes, not like a sports drink that's got loads of sugar, just an electrolyte in water. Yeah. So salt's a good one, isn't it?
One of the brands I use is Trace Element. That is purely minerals only. There's no synthetic sweeteners in there or anything like that. Another good one is called Beam Minerals. They are totally natural. They have a two-parter. They do an electrolyte and they do a heavy metal detoxer. And that's just a liquid. I rely on those heavily when I'm fasting for longer periods because they do bring me back to life. But I do take those daily. They're a good one. There's also a brand called LMNT, which are sachets. They are a clean, they have natural flavourings in them, but they are genuinely natural, not natural where the chemical, and they are safe. But yeah, you don't want to be looking at things like Lucozade, any sports drinks or any things that are like processed electrolytes, shall we call them.
Yeah And no tea or coffee for you then normally?
So you can have black coffee. Again, make sure your coffee's, clean, mold-free, toxin-free, that kind of stuff. So you can have essentially black coffee, and you can put MCT powder in your black coffee, which is derived from coconuts. And that shouldn't break your fast. But I will also caveat this with, if you truly want to know what is and isn't breaking your fast, I would either recommend you get something like a continuous glucose monitor and wear that ideally for a month. Each one lasts about 2 weeks to track your spikes. But also there's a product called Keto Mojo, and a Keto Mojo is a finger prick blood test. So literally harmless. And that tracks both your glucose and also your ketones. And that's another key thing when you are in your fat burner. We want those ketones to be kicking in, which means that then your body's burning fat. So that's quite a good little piece of kit that you can get if you are going to be somebody that's going to be, getting seriously into fasting and kind of developing a fasting lifestyle. A Keto Mojo is really kind of one of your, I would say, essentials of your toolkit, really, to really know your data as to what's going on and where you're switching from sugar burner to fat burner.
So good. Such great tips. It's good to understand actually what is a fasting. We kind of skipped over that, but that's really, really helpful. So I literally have about another 10 questions I could ask you, Sarah, but I'm aware of time. So where can we continue this conversation with you beyond this podcast? I saw on your website you do a coaching audit at a really great price. So would that be a good place for people to start with you if they wanted a bit more support on their fasting journey? And where else can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so ultimately the fasting audit, what that does is it's quite a deep dive into your own current lifestyle. It's all automated, so you sign up for it, pay online, and it's on 50% off at the moment. Actually, it's £50. And basically what you do is you get this long consultation form which covers all your medical history, your everything really, and it's important that you give me as much information on that form as you possibly can, because that will then allow me to kind of see red flags. And what I do with that information is I go through it, I look at your history, look at what you're currently doing, and then I do you a personalised video recording for you to keep, which goes through all your information, highlights any red flags, sort of little tweaks that you could potentially make to get the most out of your fasting, and also give you some guidance on where you might just be not getting it quite right, or things that you might want to try. And then I also have an opportunity from that, once you've done that element of it, to work with me on a one-to-one basis. So even if you're somebody that's kind of done fasting for a while, like I did, but not quite seeing the results that you're wanting to get, you might just need some hand-holding and some guidance and some kind of to switch things around a little bit. That'd be one-to-one. Or there's the other side of it, where if you're totally new to fasting and you're not really into doing all the research yourself and reading the book and going off and kind of investigating bits and pieces yourself, you might just want somebody to kind of hold you accountable and to tell you what to do, and that's where I come in. That's through sort of email support and voicemail and things like that. Think of me as your own personal kind of fasting PA, really, that kind of thing. That's where the one-to-one. I also offer a couple of other platforms. So I'm on Instagram, Fasting Like a Girl UK is where you can find me on Instagram, and I share quite a lot of data on there about fasting, and I'm hosting a live on there actually tonight with Be Minimals, so I'll be inviting guests on there as well to share other elements of fasting, not just about the fasting journey, as it were, things that you can utilize to make your fasting journey better and optimize. And then I also have a free Facebook group, which is private. It's just for females. You don't have to be in the menopause. It's for all females, because the younger actually that you start with fasting, within reason, the better you've got a chance of having a much healthier lifestyle and a much longer, healthier life. So that Facebook group, as I say, is private, and that's fasting. Oh my goodness, my brain's gone dead.
We'll link it, don't worry.
Fasting for female, for hormone harmony, I think it is.
Brilliant. We'll pop all these links in the notes anyway.
And that is, as I say, free to join. I do quite a lot of lives in there, and giving people insight, and it's a community-based thing. So that's another key thing for when you are fasting, and as women, we need community. We work better in community. My plan is to do some supported fasts within that group, longer fasts, sort of building up to that at the moment. So that's an amazing group. We've got over 200 people in there now, of women that just share ideas and ask questions, and just also share some of the pitfalls and trials and tribulations of the menopause, and have a safe space to rant and vent and just, support each other.
Yeah, that's so important. Like you say, to do this in community. We're not meant to live and reach our goals in isolation. We need that connection and accountability. So that sounds amazing. So yeah, I'll put the links to all of these things in the notes for the podcast, but I'll also link that book that you mentioned and some of these supplements because they sound really helpful. But Sarah, it's been so good. I'm really excited to go away and put some of this in practice. And if you're listening, let us know what you've taken from today and what you're going to be doing. And if Sarah or I can support you on that journey, we'd love to hear from you. So it's been really, really, really helpful. Great topic. I've loved hearing about it. But just to end on a fun note, we've been talking the whole time about not eating, but let's get back to eating because, that's fun. So Sarah, I'd love to know what you would have after all this talk about fasting for your last meal on earth, when you're just going to go crazy, indulge yourself.
Oh God, it's so hard because one thing I am is a foodie, but I will say that fasting has stopped my codependence for food, so I'm not quite as obsessed as I once was. So that's another good thing that it teaches you. But last meal on earth, I think it'd have to be something seafood related. I love fish, so God, what would I choose? Let's say I'm gonna go old school lobster thermidor with at this point I won't care really what I'm eating because I'm gonna pop off with some fries.
Nice. Oh, you can't beat the chips.
And a nice green salad.
Oh, nice. That sounds good. Cooked by a really good chef. That sounds amazing.
Really tasty, but really fresh.
Because that's what it's about. It's about putting habits in place to feel well, but also to really enjoy food when we do have it, isn't it? And I can imagine how fasting helps you appreciate it and savour it even more. So
it does. And the other thing as well is to, we can't live like nuns all the time. We still have to have a life. Okay. So I'm all about sort of like the 80-20 rule, 80% good, 20% not so great. My demon is sugar. It still is despite all these lengthy fasts that I've done, but it's getting better. And I'm learning how to kind of put the brakes on it a little bit with fibre and things like that and protein. But at the end of the day, I am programmed that way. I like a cake. I like sweet things. And that is where you'll find me if I'm falling off the wagon.
Gotta have some cake. What would life be without cake, right?
Exactly.
It's all about balance.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your time, though, Sarah. It's been great to hear your wisdom. And I'm sure people will be following you and getting in touch to find out more. So thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Pleasure.